Hello my bookish lovelies, Kira here, and today I'm going to be talking about the sequel to The Bear and the Nightingale in the Winternight Trilogy, The Girl in the Tower by Katherine Arden. So I will say that there is a trigger warning in this book for stillbirth. Now, as far as this book's concerned, this video will be spoiler free, but if you have not read all the way to the end of Bear and the Nightingale, then it's going to be spoilers for you. We will have spoilers for this particular book towards the end of this video, and if you guys want to listen to all of that, then stick around. Being the fact that this is book 2 in the Winternight Trilogy, this book basically picks up where The Bear and the Nightingale left off, except we are following Sasha, Vassia's brother, as he plays consort for the prince. Now, Sasha we met in the first book, and he always had a very big passion, like in the first book, for becoming a monk. In this, he is still a monk. He actually did pursue that. Except now, he is actually playing the lead consort to the prince. Everything that the prince has questions about, he relies very heavily on Sasha. So we actually see Sasha, and we also see Olga, who is Vassia's other sister, who actually married a prince regent. And so she's also in Moscow, in the capital, and so we get to follow them. Whereas in the first book, we really didn't see much of them because they had already vacated the scenery of the book and basically Vassia's main life at that point in the story, about halfway through. So as we follow Sasha, we follow him for about 2 weeks, and then we actually go back 2 weeks into the past and then follow Vassia up until the 2 weeks we meet Sasha, and she does at some point run into Sasha again. This is not a spoiler, this happens within the first, I want to say 50 pages of the book. They actually do re-meet up quite early on, but she's been traveling through the woods as a boy, so she's actually seen as Sasha and Olga's brother and not their sister, because this book still kind of encapsulates the 1300s Russia, where women are not supposed to be out of the house. They're supposed to be locked in their towers. They're supposed to be these very feminine women who are easily to control, they're property. And so we see a lot of different aspects here, with Vassia, who is actually extremely gender fluid, which I really love that about her character. She's constantly dressing up as a boy, to try to continue to gain her independence. I was immensely worried going into this that I would not love this very much, because when I read Bear and the Nightingale, everybody was hyping it up. Everybody said how wonderful and amazing it was. And honestly, it took 200 pages in The Bear and the Nightingale to really get into it. And we had maybe 100 pages of action, which was really disappointing. But I will say that this book right here, I've already read all 3 of the books. There will be another review coming out for The Winter of the Witch, which is the 3rd book in the series, in the future. But I will say that, in my opinion, this book right here is the strongest book out of the trilogy, because whereas a lot of books suffer from second book syndrome, this I did not feel did at all, because this actually I felt really fleshed out the storyline and where it was going. Just like in the first book, this book is also heavily laced with Russian folklore, but there seems that there is a lot more focus on 1300s Russia and the political climate at the time. We are actually able to explore more of historical Russia and able to see a lot more of the people in it. Of course, there's a lot of fictional characters in here, but this really I felt really expanded on not just Vassia and her little edge of the woods world, but also the bigger Russian world that she is a part of. Now the characters in this, because they are this is a fairy tale type atmosphere for all of these books, the characters are developed as pretty much as they could possibly be, I feel in a fairy tale setting, mainly to drive the plot forward, but not enough to convince me that they are real people. Vassia in this book has a lot of really powerful energy, more so I feel than she did in the first book. In this, because she is mistaken as a boy, she actually has to pretend to be a boy to pretty much everyone that she meets while she's in Moscow, which kind of presents an issue for Sasha and Olga, because they are having to lie for her because they're calling Vassia their brother instead of their sister. Women are not supposed to have political opinions on anything. It's kind of sad, though, I mean, this definitely goes along with a lot of other historical type settings where women are not worth very much, and I don't feel that this series like was any different. Like, women are still not worth very much in this bigger political setting. They're expected to stay home in the tower and have babies, and that's pretty much the extent of what they're supposed to do. This book really highlights how Vassia is struggling to find a common ground between her needs and the needs of her nation. She wants to run free and help the mythological Cherti, who are demons to the old religion, and not everybody can see these Cherti. Vassia is actually an exception to this rule. She has some sort of ability like to be able to see these Cherti who actually help to protect the house, and she makes offerings to them. But once again, we have the new religion trying to take away the old religion, and they're seeing the old religion as devil worship. And this is really hard for her because her country really needs her to stay quiet and continue on with the cultural norms of her country, because like there's so many other things going on like right now, like that an uproar like in the country, like to segment it would really hurt any possibilities of wartime and disunite the country. Another thing I will say too is that in The Bear and the Nightingale we did get a little bit of a romance, and there is actually more of a romance in this book, I would say, like than we got in Bear and the Nightingale, and we really got to explore that quite a bit more, and we got to see a lot more of it. It's never a dominant plot line in any of these books, but it is really valuable because like it does aid Vassia like in many different circumstances, like circumstances where she possibly could have died. But it also kind of like lends like kind of like a really nice like romantic element, and kind of takes the edge off of like all like the wartime type things. And it's just really subtle, and it's not like super dominating like in the plot at all. And I really like that aspect, especially because it's an immortal who's falling in love with a mortal. And you also have like a lot of like little folklore, Russian folklore kind of like laced out throughout this. And it kind of like makes you wonder like where the story's headed, because you wonder like if the immortal being will survive his love affair with Vassia. One of the things I really love about the series is you never really know which characters in this are going to become more than just the mere mortals they appear to be. And I really think like that's such a wonderful aspect, because it keeps you guessing and it keeps you like on your toes. So I really loved how we got like so much more than we bargained for. And it really like kind of like like an extra like element of mystery to the plot line, as well as an extra layer. I will, like I said before, like I really think that this is the strongest book out of all three books, because of how like we really developed like everything. Like the progression of the plot was very steady, and the characters like got to be fleshed out like a little bit more. Like we got to go out into the world and we got to have an adventure, and I just feel like that there was just so much uncharted territory that we got to explore in this book, versus the previous book like where Vassia's still kind of like growing up and, you know, kind of getting affiliated with how things are. So I did end up rating this book a 5 out of 5 stars because I just thought it was amazing. Like this had me at the edge of my seat, and like I did not stop reading this until like the very last page. I just was so enraptured with everything that was going on, and it was just, I felt like everything was just so perfect in this book. Like I felt like this book more than made up for me having to have patience like in The Bear and the Nightingale, and I do highly recommend this series just because of this book alone. Like this book alone was amazing. So this is the area like where we are exiting the spoiler-free area and entering the spoilers. So if you do not want to know anything more about this book, so I suggest that you not continue on with this, because we are going to be going into more details kind of like about like the ending, like where this book went, and my final thoughts like on this particular book. So thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you, and if you continue on like with this, I'll see you guys again during the spoilers. Thank you guys so much for coming back. I take it you guys like have already read the book, or you don't care and you want spoilers anyway, because I know like that sometimes like, you know, you don't really care enough about a book to read it, or you want to hear like, you know, what another outside opinion on something that you've already read. So let's go ahead and get into the spoilers on The Girl in the Tower. So Cassian is this character that we followed throughout the entire book. And come to find out, he is a immortal sorcerer who's been around for a very long time, and he's hidden his life force in an external source so that Marzocco, who is the Frost King and also Death, cannot find his soul to reap him. Cassian actually feeds off of people like Vassia, who have the ability to see the ancient spirits. I really loved how Cassian was used in this book. This is actually one of the reasons like why I love this book so much, is because like we have Cassian throughout this entire book. He's not even considered a major character. He's just very subtle and he's very behind the scenes most of the time. And we only have we only really have a few scenes like where he dominates the scene. And come to find out he turns out to be like this very major player, like in the greater scheme of things, who has his own history and his own plot line, and actually is tied with Vasia's. There's a ghost in Olga's house called Tamara, and Tamara is Vasia's grandmother, who also by default would be Olga's grandmother. And Cassian and Tamara had a love affair while she was alive. I love that because like it just adds so much more like to the story, and it was just very intriguing. And because the complex plot line, like I never saw it coming. Also, like to reflect on the girl in the tower and the things that we talked about before, there are men in this book that are constantly trying to keep women in towers because they do not want them out and about. They do not think they should be out and about. They think they should be locked up in a tower. But it's kind of fun because like I like how this really like trumps like the girl in the tower trope, because apparently like that's a trope in this, is like, oh, I'm a girl who lives in the tower. You know, like I'm a traditional girl, you know, I'm like other girls. So you have all of these other girls like that Vasia ends up really deeply affecting. And most of these girls like that Vasia comes into contact with do not end up staying in a tower, and they end up changing the world and Russia in the 1300s. Olga was kept in a tower, Tamara was kept in a tower. They tried to keep Vasia in a tower, but we all saw how that went because you wouldn't have a book without Vasia refusing to listen to being kept in a tower. Maria, Olga's daughter, refused to stay in the tower, and actually like Vasia was kind of like helping her escape the tower. But Vasia ends up refusing Cassian because Cassian is trying to save her. It seems like every time a woman does not fall into the what traditional women should be, they're called witches because they don't know how else to describe them. So that's how people kind of sum up like, oh, she's a witch because she doesn't fit into the norm. So you actually have Vasia who gets an offer from Cassian, and at this point she knows who Cassian is. And Cassian's like, hey, you know, like you can be my wife and you'll be protected. But then Vasia's like, no, I don't think so. And then because Mara, who's Olga's daughter, actually also has a sight and is able to see like the old demons of the old religion. And Mara actually does have the sight just like Vasia does. So it kind of like skipped over because Olga can't see all of these demons like that they discussed like from the old religion. And neither can Sasha. And actually like this is a fairly rare gift to be able to see like these demons from the old religion, like these house deities. And so Vasia kind of has a protege. Now, there was a gemstone that Vasia wore throughout for Marzocco, who is the Frost King. She did actually end up destroying it at some point, and that was kind of like his power, like his link to her. Like a parallel between like that and Cassian. Cassian had this gemstone all of his own. It's a red gemstone, and once that was destroyed, he started to age very quickly because that was actually the source of where he was keeping his life force. Now, this actually comes like to a very intense climax like at the end of this book, where we have this big battle in a tower between Maria, Vasia, Cassian, and Marzocco, and it is everything that I wanted it to be and so much more. And that's one of the reasons like why I just think like this book is so worth it, because like the climax like for this is just amazing, like all onto itself, because it just flowed so perfectly from one thing to the next, and it just like it never felt like it wasted any time. It never felt like it got slower, and I just loved the actual climax like for the end of this book. Like it was just so good. One of the quotes like that I really love too, because Marzocco, being the fact that he is the Winter King, he vanishes almost completely like during the summer season, which there's not a lot of summer season. I think like summer season like lasts for like 3 months out of the year, and then he starts to come back again. Towards the end of this book, Marzocco is actually fading out, and he says to Vasia, "One cannot be alive and be immortal. But when the wind blows and the storm hangs heavy upon the world, when men die, I will be there. It is enough. This book is super poetic. I love the way this book is written. It's so beautiful, and definitely a 5 out of 5 stars. And I do honestly think that you guys should read this. I love like all like the little tidbits, like how everything just perfectly, seamlessly came together at the end. And I do think like that this is just such a brilliant, brilliant book, and you guys should definitely check it out. Well guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys like this review. If you guys like this review, hit the little like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell icon if you guys want to receive emails every single time I post. I am also on Instagram, Amazon, Goodreads, and Twitter. Those links are linked in the description below, and I will see you guys again very soon.